Okay, go ahead, Arnie. We're all set.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission. We'll open the meeting with the roll call. Mr. Urice.
Here.
Ms. Hostetter. Helen.
Here.
Oh. Mr. Chiocchio.
Here.
Mr. Sylvain.
Here.
Mr. Renz is absent. Mr. Haas. Kevin.
Here.
All right, and Chairman Finaldi is here. We will not need to seat any additional alternates this evening at this time. Commission members, the minutes of the previous meeting, May 19th, 2021, have been distributed prior to this meeting. Unless there's any corrections or discussion, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved. Helen.
Second.
Motion made and to accept the minutes of the May 19th, 2021 meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The minutes are accepted. I should have abstained from that particular vote because I was not present, so let the record show that Chairman Finaldi was an abstention from that vote. All right. As per our agenda, our next regularly scheduled meeting it will be on June 16th, 2021. We have no new public hearings this evening, but before we go to our continuation of public hearings, I'll just read the brief statement on virtual meetings. Again, this meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission is being held on Zoom as a virtual meeting. Even though this meeting is virtual, members of the public and interested parties continue to have the opportunity to participate in the meeting in a couple of different ways. You can participate via Zoom and see the audio and the video, or you can call in by phone and participate via audio only. Just a heads up, if you call in, we may have to ask you to mute and unmute your phone to avoid an echo. Instructions on how to participate in the meeting appear on the City of Danbury website, and all of the documents and materials that apply to the matters to be discussed during this meeting, including the agenda, are also available on the City of Danbury website. As always, if you have any questions, please contact the City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department. As a reminder, this entire meeting will be posted on and can be seen on the City of Danbury website. We will follow the posted agenda as per our standard practice. If prior to the meeting any questions or comments on agenda items were submitted via email to Sharon Calitro, those comments will be read during the appropriate portion of the meeting. With that aside, we'll move right to our continuation of public hearing agenda. Item 1, Newtown Road LLC, Maria and Manuel Andre, Manuel Neves Govea Marquez, and Antonio Mendez Govea Marquez. Application for special exception site plan approval for child daycare center in the CG20 RA8 zone, 36 Newtown Road, 40 and 42 Newtown Road, and Whitney Avenue. I'll skip the reading of the map numbers. As shown on our agenda, this application is tabled and there will be no action taken on it or discussion of it this evening. Jen, how are we doing time-wise on this application?
We're fine on time, Mr. Chairman. We have until, I believe it's the second meeting in July.
Okay, thank you. So there's nothing, do we need a motion to continue? We probably should, right?
Yes, please.
I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter till our next meeting.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to continue the matter of Newtown Road until our next meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? This matter will be continued. Item 2, Nigerian Plaza LLC. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Urice to oversee the continuation of public hearing on this matter. Joel, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Mr. Haas, will you sit in for Mr. Finaldi on this application?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay, continuation of public hearing. Nigerian Plaza LLC application for special exception, revised site plan approval, to permit storage of concrete aggregate or manufacture of concrete and concrete products, storage of bituminous product, storage or sale of building materials, and storage of construction equipment, Nigerian Pool Industry Site in the IG 80 zone, 44 Payne Road in 12004, special exception 776. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Ward Mizuko again here on behalf of the applicant. Just to remind you where we are, when we left the last session of this hearing, there were a few questions pending. Also, Jennifer issued a supplemental staff report that raised a few questions. I have revised the operation plan to respond to the commission's questions and the staff report. And I just would like to report on that. And also just to look ahead, there were questions about the screening on the property. The chair wanted some additional photographs. We have those. And there's also an issue of the fence on site. So if I may share my screen, I can, I have a modified version of the presentation from last time, but I can zero in on the issues that I think you'll find relevant tonight. Is that all right, Mr. Chairman? I think you said yes, but you're on mute. So.
Here, I mute myself so I didn't interrupt you. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Mizuko.
Thank you, sir. I don't think I have permission to share my screen. Looks like Joanna is working on it.
Just give me a minute. For some reason, what am I doing wrong? There we go. Okay, I finally hit the right thing. Okay, you're all set, Ward.
Thank you very much, Joanna.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay. Some of this will look familiar, but let me jump up to the issues of immediate importance. Okay, so on the operation plan, one of the questions was, are we sure we've covered the items used, the construction materials used for general construction in addition to pools? So I added that clarification. And also there was a question about whether concrete was being stored indoors or outdoors, and it was probably a poor choice of words on my part that resulted in that confusion, but concrete aggregates, concrete that's already formed, would be outside, products created with concrete, in other words, but cement, the raw material that goes into concrete, would be stored indoors, of course. You don't want that in the rain. And there was also a request for clarification on where vehicles will be repaired and parked. I tried to clarify that. Hours of operation, there was a request for that. And it's almost every day without fail, the hours are limited to 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. But really during the pool opening and closing seasons, there can occasionally be a truck coming back as late as 9 o'clock if it comes from quite a distance. And then one of the other questions was which activities take place indoors and which tend to take place outdoors. And I tried to clarify that here. Anyway, those you now have before you. And then one of the other questions was about screening. And the commission wanted some face-on screening. You had this slide last time, but it does show some of the face-on screening from the Jehovah's Witnesses site. And that's across the street. Okay, so this is face-on screening of this property as you proceed north from the driveway. And this is face-on screening as you proceed south from the driveway. And the gap here that you see is really part of the driveway. And from the Jehovah's Witnesses parking lot, it's pretty darn well screened. And this is from across the street. There's the Jehovah's Witnesses building, their temple. There's the shrubbery that's been cut down only for safety purposes. If it was up to us, it would grow full height, but we cut it for safety purposes. And another issue was whether fencing was needed toward the, let's see, it would be the southwest part of the property. And as you may recall, to the southwest is another construction type of use that lies at a considerably lower elevation. That's got to be 20 feet lower, if I had to guess. So that gives you yet another view of it. So I think one of the questions that the staff report raised was, should there be a fence or screening along this boundary? And I would respectfully suggest that since we're really talking a very similar use and at a very different elevation to boot, that a fence along this boundary would really help no one. Another question that came up last time, or actually I should say since last time, Construction Services raised a question about this island. I think they wanted the island eliminated. I think Ralph or Mr. Nijame confirmed with Mr. Barone that that was the essence of what he was looking for. So that we would propose to remove this island here. And that's about as much as we can react to at this point. I think there are some comments from city officials pending. Jen will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think engineering is still assessing the plan and hasn't commented yet. So I think we'll have to keep the meeting open with the permission of the commission, and I've already given an extension letter to that effect. I'm happy to address any questions on what we have so far or to discuss any other aspect of the project.
Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Mizuko?
None here. Thank you.
Joel, I have a question, Bob, or some comments, I guess.
Go ahead, Bob.
Sure. I think in Jen's memo to staff, she points out some inconsistencies in some of the kind of the bin sizes, the number of bins. There's a number of inconsistencies there. So I think what I'd like to ensure is that all of those get rectified. It seems to me that the stuff that goes on this site has been probably taking place, give or take, probably 20 years. And so it feels like this is kind of clean up to make sure that everything is in order with the proper approvals. So I think it seems like this has been going on for a long time. It just seems like it's a matter of that, everything that they're doing there, just ensure that it's plainly shown on the plan so that everybody can understand it quite easily, and kind of fix up the inconsistencies there on some of those comments. I think the other item really is some of the screening. I went by there today. In my opinion, the screening seems reasonable the way it is. And I went at it from every which way, and I actually went across the street up, I think it's Buff Road, came down that way. That's really where it's open. And I did notice that the building is pretty close to the road. I've been on that road many times. I didn't realize that the building was that close to the road. I think one of my biggest things is we keep going back and forth of including things. It's just make sure that, the site plan and all of the comments are addressed so that there's no inconsistencies anymore. And, other than that, I don't really have any other issues with this. I guess that wasn't a question, but more of comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kyokyo. Commissioners, any other comments or questions? None? Okay. I have a couple. First, can you bring up that slide again that was talking about what was included to be done in and out of the building? I had some stuff covering that slide. Covering the building. The wording there, when it's talking about woodworking, this metal fabrication, it leaves a lot to be desired for me. It says it takes place, and then it says inside the building or immediately to the rear of the building and away from Payne Road. That's a lot of flexibility. Originally, we were talking about that all occurring in the building, as well as repair of vehicles and equipment was to be done inside the building. That doesn't seem to be consistent with what you've made as a notation here. Care to
there are the purpose in having a larger building is to be able to do more of this inside, but to give a blanket guarantee that there will never ever be something taking place outside is a concern. Some of these activities are messy. I mean, if there's a cutting metal and there's a lot of metal dust, they might rather do that outdoors where they're not, creating a real mess inside. Stone cutting, same thing. If there's an opportunity to do it in a way that doesn't create a lot of dust indoors, they might prefer to do that. But in any event, anything that takes place outdoors would be behind the building. And I would like to just touch on where that puts the activity. Well, I don't have this. I have to pull up a different document for the site plan. But if the building, when proposed, is about like this shape, so if something happens behind the building, we're talking about here, where this is the neighbor to the west, and to the north is just the edge of the driveway of the Jehovah's Witnesses. The homes are very distant from what happens back here. So I'd like to think that the neighborhood is pretty well protected by that promise. I can pull up the site plan if you like to drill down on that a little bit more. And also with repair of vehicles, it's going to be much more convenient and efficient to do that inside where tools are and so forth. But there are some trucks, I'm told, that are so big that they can't work on them very well indoors, some of the tankers. So occasionally they might have to work on a tanker outdoors. We don't want to rule out the possibility of working on a tanker outdoors, even though the logical thing is to do it inside if possible. I think you're on mute, sir.
There we go. Thank you for that response. But words mean something. And the way it's worded and some of your responses, well, it might be easier or it might be, the application is not put forth of what's easy. It's what should be done. And originally we were told that all repairs would be done inside the building. I don't know if you have trailers beyond 50 feet long, but you've got an 80 by 100 building. So they could certainly be moved back in there. Cutting of metal and stone was specifically earlier said that it would be done in the building. And to me, the goalposts are being moved around here with not a lot of certainty. I'll let you chew on that for a moment. But there's a couple of things on the site. Can you bring the site plan up?
Sure, I'll have to take this off, I think, and then bring that up separately. Bear with me. I didn't have that out.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, while Ward is bringing that up, just to remind the commission, and Ward will show that, he'll show the site plan when he brings it up. But if you recall at the last meeting, there was discussion about the stone cutting, and there was a comment made on the record that there would be a small area located behind the building designated just for the stone cutting. And that was discussed at the last meeting, and that has been put on the site plan.
Okay.
But again, out of all of the things that were being done outside the building, that was the one thing that was mentioned was the stone cutting, only because of the dust and the noise. And that small area has been shown on the site plan.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. My cursor's hanging up here for a second, so please bear with me.
We have all night.
Well, I know you don't really want to spend all night doing this, though.
No, we've done that sometimes.
Okay, there you are.
Okay.
Let me see if I can zoom in on it for a better view. Okay. So you had a question about the site plan. Is this a good view?
Yeah, there was quite a morphing, if you will, of the site plan that was presented in the last meeting, as opposed to the one we had seen previously. These extra seven, I think it's 7 50-foot or so parking places over on the, as we're looking at the right-hand side of the, no, up, go up.
Oh, here?
Yeah. Yes, up there. Magically appeared, and the screening fence, which was required to screen equipment, disappeared. There was a screening fence that went from the back corner of the building back over towards the property that abuts the Seventh-day Adventist over there, or
yeah,
Jehovah's Witness, and it just disappeared, and I didn't catch it until I was looking this thing later that there's requirements to screen that equipment, but the screening's gone.
Well, actually, I would respectfully say that the screening is as abundant as ever. There's a solid row of trees here, and I can go back to the slides that illustrate it. Don't forget that the Jehovah's Witnesses site is at a somewhat higher elevation.
I'm not concerned with them.
Well, that's who the screening is for, isn't it?
No, I think the screening that ran, well, you can't see where my pointer is, that ran from that back right corner over to where there's now 7 additional parking spots.
So
I think that was not necessarily screening just for Jehovah's Witnesses. That's also, view into the yard. through the gate area.
Well, but aren't we going to run into that safety issue again? Because the only reason that these trees here are lower and afford any visibility is because we were asked to cut them back for sight distance.
That's
We'd be happy to let them grow.
that screen that I'm talking about didn't run anywhere up near that area. It ran from the corner of the building roughly over to where the front of those new Seventh's parking spots are.
So are you talking about from here down to here?
Nope. From there over to the back corner of the building.
That way?
No.
Ward,
building.
let me say something. Mr. Chairman, may I speak for the record? Ralph Gallagher. I have the answer to your question. We had screened from the back of the building toward the Jehovah's Witness and all the way around to the other side of the building. Based on your comment about being able to drive around the building, we pulled that fence out of there and we have a clear 24-foot driveway to continually wrap around the building. And we designated an area beyond that of 13,800 square feet to do the other rest of the activities and the bins and all that. So there's no need for a fence. In fact, you don't want a fence with a gate around the building, because then the flow of traffic, based on your comments, is terminated.
Well, my comments had to do with circulation, and
Correct.
gates can accommodate circulation. They open and close. I don't know where the gates were in the screening fences that were on there, but it just needed to be accommodated in order to allow for the free circulation of vehicles. It's not like it's something that, we have to open up at the first thing in the morning and leave it open till we close. It's as needed, but the screening is a requirement, and especially if you have equipment parked over there, clearly visible from across the road through the main gateway.
You mean we need a screen in the front and around the perimeter and internally? Is that what you're saying?
Look at the screening fence that was on the previous site plan, and that's what I'm talking about.
That was a gate. Though that was a gate and a fence that was determined not to be necessary or even desirable.
Who determined it wasn't necessary?
Yes, that was the determination. We needed to. You can't have a tractor trailer driver stop and get out and open a gate every time he goes to go behind the building, and then have the next guy in the truck stop and get out of the gate and open the gate, go around. We wanted a circulative flow. That's exactly what was said, and it's exactly what we showed.
You're assuming that a screening fence of construction equipment, which is required to be screened, has to be such that it's not an inconvenience for the truck driver or from somebody in the building to come out and open a gate. I have a difficult time swallowing that.
I'm just not aware of the regulations on screening internally and externally. That's my problem. So when we figure that out, we can.
Perhaps Ms. Eminger could address that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Number 3 in my staff report actually makes mention. So there's, again, you've got the screening that's required for the IG-80 zone, and then there's additional screening requirements per section 3E4 for any outdoor storage of construction equipment and building materials. The original staff report I issued April 1st, which was based off of the original map set submitted with the application, showed the opaque fence and the gate. And once that was shown, I'd said that my comment was resolved with respect to the screening. This most recent revision removed that fence, and then you added those 7 spaces and the notation for the storage of construction equipment and the repair of construction equipment. again, from staff's perspective, it's the outdoor storage of construction equipment and building materials, and this is per the regulations, must be screened from adjacent properties and the roadway with a view restrictive fence or wall. So the fence that was shown originally complied, and that's why my comment had said resolved. This revision removed that fence, and then you added more storage that is not screened from the road. So that's our position. And with respect to access around the building, you know, that comment had to do with, there were no bins at that time, and we wanted to ensure that there was free and clear access around the building, hence the recommendation for the bins. So, you know, there was no suggestion to remove the gate. That didn't come from staff, or remove the fence. And if it's, you know, with the fire department gaining access back there, there are ways for them to get back there for the gate. So from the department's position, those bins and any outdoor storage of construction equipment and building materials needs to be screened from both the adjacent properties and the roadway.
Well, I guess the only response I can have to that is that who exactly are we screening from? With our neighbor to the north, we have screening all along the way. From the roadway, we have screening all along here and all along here. The one place that screening is arguably lacking is over in this corner where we're 20 feet above another construction site, construction complex. I really have trouble understanding what a fence here is going to screen from whom. I just don't see it. And we have plenty of pictures showing that this is one of the best screened places in town because all this planning has been in place for 10 years since our initial approval. So and we're, as Ralph points out, there's a significant interference with the internal activities if there's a fence along here. It impairs circular traffic. It impairs access to the bins. And when you have material in bins, there's payloaders backing up, pulling forward, backing up, pulling forward. And the more enclosure you have, the more difficult that process becomes. So.
And one other thing, Ward, if I may, those 7 parking places that appeared, the trailer parking places, they're not storage of construction equipment. I specifically said area to be used for outside parking. It's in the parking requirements, parking and repair of construction equipment and company vehicles. So they're more than parking for company vehicles. And if one has to be repaired, they can't fit the building at that point, and they could be perhaps repaired there. But it's not for storage. So that hopefully that area can't be screened. I mean, that area doesn't need to be fenced. That would be I don't even know how you would do that.
I think I'm going to jump in there, Mr. Gallagher. With the addition of those 7 spaces, whatever you want to call them, just as you said, the repair of construction equipment, it has to be screened. That's code. It's not arguable that it's a maybe. Now, that you added those 7 from the original site plan, that makes your job of screening more difficult. Yes, they weren't there when the original site plan that we were looking at before. So I would suggest you maybe go back and think about how to stay in compliance with the regs, and if you want to keep those 7 spaces, how you could change the screening to accommodate that.
Would it be the commission's desire or requirement to screen that 7 parking place area and then have 7 gates to get the trucks out of?
You're the engineer. How you would do
I'm
that
the engineer.
is kind of in your bailiwick. We're only talking about the requirements, not how those requirements might be difficult to implement because you've changed the site plan again.
Could you help us understand who we're screening these 7 spaces from? Who can
The road, you're screening,
Road.
the road, you're
this is-
required to screen the construction equipment from the road, and you have a nice wide open gate there that makes that visible. And we're not talking about roadway plantings. We're talking about screening of the construction equipment back in the yard.
So people driving on Payne Road, despite all of this screening here, need to be protected from the sight of a few vehicles over here, or that's, so we're
Mr.
really talking
Chairman.
about screening something over here?
Ms.
Hello?
Imminger, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, it's not just the construction equipment, it's the building materials, all those bins. All I'm saying is the intent of the zoning regulations to provide the screening per 3E4 complied with the original submission. Again, that's why my staff report said resolved. You had that long fence with the gate. It was an opaque fence, which I'd requested. Again, that met the intent to screen from the roadway, including the driveway, for all storage materials and construction equipment. You've taken that out and you've now added these 7, I don't know what they are. They can't be parking spaces because you're not supposed to repair in a parking space. So, you know, I'm a little confused by the addition of the 7 spaces and the need, given that you've got the 7 10 by 50 spaces down by the road. You've got the 11 10 by 50, or maybe less, I'm not sure. You've got more 10 by 50 spaces on the left side of the site. So again, the original submission complied. It met the intent.
Ward, I would like to speak.
That's Tom Nejame for the record.
Let's let Ms. Imminger finish her train of thought, and then I'll be glad to let you speak.
Sorry.
Thank you. From the staff's position, the intent was met under the last revision. This new revision, I don't know that it meets the intent. Yes, you've got the hedgerows along the property frontage, but again, you need to be screened from the roadway. The original submission complied with that intent. That's now been changed. You know, I can certainly go back and look at it again, but you know, again, you need to be screened from the roadway, and the original submission had done that very clearly because all the storage bins were located behind that fence. You've now changed the plan and you've added those 7 spaces and you've added a whole little yard with the storage of the construction equipment, and you've removed the fence. So that will need to be reviewed. And
Can I speak?
I did do my review and my position stands.
Wait a minute, Tom.
After Ms. Imminger is through, once again, I will let you
No,
speak.
go ahead. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
go ahead,
Jennifer.
Mr.
I appreciate-
Nejame.
Jennifer, thank you very much. And Joel, thank you very much. Joel, I think your biggest concern is going down the roadway of Buff Lane, and because of the necessity of our large vehicles, the opening's quite wide.
Yep.
My answer, my question first goes to Ralph Gallagher. Ralph, can I put a fence across there, you know, and make like an automatic fence going across there like you guys did at the lake?
Yeah, now, are you talking about from the back of the building to the Jehovah's Witness?
No, in the front, just close off the front so
Here?
that people going down Buff Lane,
Sure,
you know, so we put a fence across the whole front,
automatic fence. Yeah, that'd make
automatic
everybody
fence
happy.
across the whole front and be done with this thing.
Yes.
To me, that is Joel's biggest issue. The screening, in my opinion, is spectacular. The reality is what you're trying to do is protect the people or the people that are in single family homes on the Bethel side. which actually we've been doing great with them because the screening is improved, and they've done their own screening to boot. It's really about running down Buff Lane. So if we put a fence across there, wouldn't that eliminate all our problems? And would it be okay with you, Jennifer?
Mr. Chairman, my
Yes.
one concern, if you're going to put it right across the driveway, is that will impede the ability of vehicles to come and go quickly. So then you're going to end up queuing onto Payne Road, and that would present an issue.
Miss Imminger, as I understood it, he's talking about putting an automatic gated fence from the front right corner over towards the, I guess, parking places.
Yeah, I guess I'm not clear on that. Where
Not
that's going.
not across the driveway, but inside the yard from the corner of the building over towards
By
well,
parking
where-
places.
yeah, where the parking places
Possibly.
are, the screening is, whatever.
Where I'm moving the cursor, is that what you're
Yep.
talking about, Tom?
Yes,
Yes.
I think that would be fine. I mean,
Yep.
again, we can talk about it a little bit more once you show the
Sounds
date.
good. Let's do it, guys.
All right.
Okay, I think we're splitting hairs there. So Ralph, indicate that on your print.
I will.
Okay.
And I will take off.
Also indicate on the print, getting rid of that island.
Yes.
Okay,
And I'll get rid of
'cause
the wording. I'll get rid of the wording about the 7 parking places in the back to be
Yeah.
used for repair. I'll get the repair word out of there, right, Joel?
Yeah.
That's what you want out of it.
Well, but
Okay.
I do want to,
that way, I think the way Ward was suggesting that the trucks can go right in and then the gate can be open.
Yep.
So you're not impeding on the traffic at all. So I think that's a great idea.
okay.
Sounds like a plan.
I do want to comment too, just on the context of the whole application, because there's been the suggestion that a lot of changes have been made to the plan and there's a lot of variation and a lot of options open. And way back when I met with planning staff to discuss how we might go forward, because the initial approval from several years ago was expired, the point made clear to me was, let's get everything out in the open. Anything that you might want to do, let's get it on the table. And for example, and also we've had a lot of reports from city officials, including planning. We've had input from this commission. And we've also drilled down on what actually happens on site. Ralph and I have been out there for hours with Tom going over how the site actually works. And it's in light of all of that input and experience that we've made the plan evolve to what you have now. And so when Ralph puts repair over here, that's on purpose. It's my suggestion. And the reason is, let's say a truck is sitting here and they notice that it's got a flat tire and somebody wants to change the tire. Do they have to drive it into the bay to change the tire, or can they change the tire where the truck happens to be? We want to get everything on the table. We don't want to be running afoul of technical violations, but it also means introducing a lot of apparent options so that, we are trying to get everything on the table so that you can see it. And as the site goes forward, you won't have any complaint with what's happening there. We want to be a good neighbor and to have full transparency about the scope of activities.
Okay, thank you. Miss Imminger, did you have something else? Miss
Mr.
Imminger?
Chairman, not at this time. I'm gonna let I don't know if Ward plans on responding to the staff report. I know he's made a presentation, but I'd certainly prefer to have a response to the staff report, and I'd like to see the plans revised so the notes are consistent with what's noted on the operation plan and the testimony.
Okay, we can do
Okay.
that. Mr. Chairman, I have one more thing, if I might, Ralph Gallagher again.
Sure, Ralph.
The area, Jennifer, that you said was, the bins were 4,400 square feet instead of 13,600. The area I designated that was 13,600, you can see it's a line out in front of the bins. It was an area that I thought we could also use in case we had an overflow from the bins. If that's not acceptable, I may have to make the bins a little bit bigger because I don't want to give up from 13,600 down to 4,400 square feet. Because that's all kind of ambiguous, an area, you know, if that's all right.
I'm a
Ralph,
little
I'll let you work that out with,
Yeah, I was actually
Jennifer.
going to suggest that. Let's work that offline. I will
Okay.
say on the record, my concern is making sure that rear storage area doesn't bleed into the rear access area, the area. And again, during testimony, you presented, that you may not be doing things inside the building, you're going to do them to the rear of the building. Well, now you're adding an increased outdoor storage area to that. So that's where the bleed starts to happen. And again, my position from the very beginning was to make sure that these bins aren't, or the storage areas aren't haphazard, that there's some order to the site. And this is certainly an improvement. It really is. And I like the idea of the bins, and, I don't mind the note, that, the bins will have, the various types of storage materials. I'm fine with that. That increased area, I'm not entirely sure about.
Okay,
But
all right.
We can certainly talk about that offline, and I'll come back to the commission
Okay.
about that. But
Very good.
remember, this is incidental. As you'd said on your plans, it's incidental. So you've got a 13,000 square foot area in an 8,000 square foot building. So I'm just trying to keep the incidental to what's truly incidental and not primary.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
But again, we can work that offline.
okay.
One other thing I would like you to work with Jennifer on offline, I think, because we're not going to hash it out tonight, is this whole dive, what's done inside, what's down outside. I was a lot more comfortable, a couple of weeks back about somehow, while I understand there'll be things occasionally that you need to do outside. Stone cutting is not necessarily one of them. I'm very familiar with stone cutting, but somehow it has to, if things need to be done outside of the building, it has to somehow express in a rare occasion, XYZ might happen outside, not as a matter of fact.
Excuse me, Joe,
Yeah.
can I speak?
You can.
Joel,
Yes, Tom.
again, this is going back to what Ward just mentioned. Jennifer asked that we go through in absolute detail what is going on this property, okay? Exactly what you just said regarding cutting stone outside would probably be one or two times in a year. The point is, we were trying to be transparent with everything that we're doing on this site. We're a successful, good, honest, hardworking company. We're trying to do things right. And when Jennifer asked for all this, okay, we went through this in detail, me, Ward, and Ralph. And what you're saying is exactly what's going to happen. It's extremely rare. It probably would have been better if we just didn't say anything and just did it and no one ever worried about it. But we wanted to be transparent with this commission so we can get it right. I mean, I'm a man of my word. I do what I got to do things right. And that's why it seemed to get a little bit complicated.
Okay, well, if you can make Jennifer happy, that's gonna probably make me happy on the wording. And by the way, I have always admired how you did business. It's a well-run company. Good
Thank you,
reputation, good
Thank you,
reputation.
Joe.
Okay, anyone else, any other comments for staff or for the applicant? Okay, anyone else want to speak in not support, in favor of this application? Anyone in favor? Anyone else want to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who wants to speak against this application? Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Okay, hearing none. If there's nothing more, I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
I'll make that motion, Joel, to continue this application.
Thank you, Mr. Keel.
Second. Perry.
Second, Perry. All right, any comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Nope, okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for your
Thank you.
participation, Mr. Haas.
No problem.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Time tonight. See
Thank
in
you.
2 weeks.
Joanne, can you let Arnie back in the meeting?
Yeah, I'm turning the gavel back over to Mr. Fernaldi.
We're just waiting for him to be let back in.
Uh-huh. He's in there, no.
I
Forgot
don't
we're-
see
we're-
him. Jen,
we're
he's
live.
not there.
Oh,
We're live.
Tell him to try again. To ask to be admitted.
Let's see if I can, oh, is he?
no,
At-
he left. I asked him to leave the meeting.
There he
Okay,
comes. Okay, now I got him.
okay.
You just wait a minute. Okay, there he is. Okay.
Hello?
Mr. Fernaldi,
Yes, I am back.
have a nice nap, I guess.
Yeah, almost. You almost caught me. Okay, so if everybody's ready to move forward under continuation of public hearings, I believe we just wrapped up number 2. So we will go right to number 3. Real-Time Capital Properties LLC, application for special exception revised site plan for expansion of existing self-storage facility, safe and sound storage in the IL40 zone, 18 Great Pasture Road, L15008 and 009, special exception number 769. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, it's Mike Mizuko, professional engineer. My office is in Danbury, representing Real-Time Capital Properties LLC on this application. And at not the last meeting, the previous meeting to that, there was a concern about materials that were still stored in the access way, and the applicant made efforts to get it out. We had to table it at the last meeting because it wasn't completely cleared. I did go out to the site today. Everything was out of the access way, except there was a dumpster where they had just thrown garbage and stuff that was just still there. The refuse company hasn't removed it as of this morning when I was there, but it was clearly full of garbage from stuff that was just in the access way. And Jennifer Eminger had sent me an email about a note on the plan about prohibiting storage of any material within that access way. We had a note on there. It was sort of restricted to the residential back portion of that access way. And she wanted to modify that note to just say everything within the access way any storage would be prohibited within that access way. So this afternoon, I revised the plan and sent her a PDF just with that note on the site plan, and I added it to another location on the map as well.
Okay.
I
Is
think
that
that was the only outstanding item that we were waiting for, was just to get certification that access way was cleared out.
Mike, do you have pictures that you can show the commission?
Let me see here.
Mr.
And then
Chairman,
Mike- Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, Bob.
while we're waiting for Mike to find those pictures, go ahead, Bob.
I visited the site about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I can say that there was nothing in the access road, and the dumpster was, I did not see a dumpster there, so it probably was removed between the time that Mike was there and when I was there, around maybe 3 o'clock or so.
Yeah, when I was there, Bob, with the applicant, he had called the refuse company and he said he was going to make every effort to get there today to get it out.
Yeah, I didn't see it, so it's, I would say it's gone.
All right. So, I mean, if I can share my screen, I can go through the pictures.
Can we accommodate that? There we go.
Yes, yes.
There we go.
So that's looking up towards Great Pasture Road. That was the last picture. That's just further back looking towards Great Pasture. That's the dumpster with the garbage in it. That's just looking again more towards Great Pasture. And then that's looking the other way towards the rear. So, and that's a nice evening sky last night over St. Great Church.
Yeah, very nice.
So that those are the photos that I took this morning.
Thanks, Mike. Is that it?
That's it. That was the only issue that we had. We did get a final letter from engineering. I don't think there were any other outstanding comments. Jennifer, you can comment on that, but I think we were all clear.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there are no outstanding comments. All departmental comments have been addressed.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone else in favor? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone in opposition? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Joel.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion made to close. Do I hear a second? Seconded by Helen. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Mr.
Opposed?
Chairman,
This
I'd
public-
like to make a motion to move this to old business for discussion and possible action. I think it's item 1.
Yes, it would be.
I'll second that too.
Motion made and seconded to move this matter to item 1 or under old business for discussion and possible action. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? This matter is moved to item 1 under old business, and we just happen to be right there. Old business for discussion and possible action. Item 1, Real-Time Capital Properties LLC application for special exception, revised site plan for expansion of existing self-storage facilities, safe and sound storage in the IL40 zone, 18 Great Pasture Road, L15008 and 009, special exception number 769. Comments, commission members?
Looks like they've done their job, Mr. Chairman, and cleared all of the issues standing between them and a positive rendering from the commission.
Chairman, I'll agree
Yes,
with
Helen.
that. I'll just add my agreement to what Joel said. Looks good.
Okay.
I would agree as well, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just had this flashback to many years ago. There was a building on Federal Road. It's the old Grand Prix Motors, the previous one. It's now like a Durant's Rental Center or something like that.
Yep, yep.
And the applicant came forward and he gave us his word that the equipment to be rented would not be stored in the front of the building in the parking lot. It would all be kept in the back.
Don't get me started on that one.
Well-intentioned, had no reason to not believe him. And no sooner does he get the approval, equipment begins to show up in the front, where I believe to this day it is. And I will take the applicant at their word that this access way is cleared out for good. But I do also know that these meetings are taped for prosperity. And I'll be very disappointed, let's just say, if this access way begins to clutter up with old cars and boats and stuff again. And we're sort of sitting here, sending the zoning enforcement officer out there every month or two, only to have it cluttered up again. I just wanted to go on the record as having said that, so that if anybody looks at this meeting years from now, they're like, well, Finaldi might have been onto something. But for now, I will take the applicant at their word, and we can move forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Go
may
ahead,
may I suggest that when staff is putting together the resolution, the draft resolution, they might include as a condition of the approval that access way remain free and clear of anything other than the grass.
No, I'm sure Jen had that already all queued up and go,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
it's not
I was going to suggest that.
it's not an authorship issue, it's a enforcement issue. But
Yes.
let's take the applicant at their word and we can move forward. So, okay, Jen, you got your guidance.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it for old business, so we can move right to referrals. Item 1, 3A referral, petition of D&B Wellness to amend sections 5A, 5F2, 5B, 3B, and 5B, 5F1 of the zoning regulations. Delete prohibition on drive-through window for medical marijuana dispensary. Zoning Commission public hearing scheduled for June 8th, 2021. I believe, Sharon, are you going to do the presentation on this one?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, commission members, Sharon's report was distributed previously, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you. For the record, Sharon Calitro, I'm the planning director. So we did receive, the zoning commission received a petition to amend those referenced sections 5A, 5F2, 5B, 3B, 5B, 5F1 of the zoning regulations, in which encompasses both the CG20 and CG80 zones, to delete the prohibition on the dispensing of medical marijuana by licensed medical marijuana dispensaries through a drive-in or drive-through use to patrons waiting in an automobile. And again, the petitioner's reason why it should be, the petition should be granted was contained in their petition. We have a number of comments, which I'll go through, and were presented in my staff report. So the prohibition of the delivery of medical marijuana products through a drive-through use or a window was included in the petitioner zoning amendment, which was approved last year. And that amendment affected obviously both the CA80 and CG20 zoning districts. In addition to that prohibition was a prohibition on the dispensing. There were restrictions, on dispensaries that included the prohibition on the sale of recreational marijuana, and that's important because it's tied to my comments. The prohibition on the drive-through use was intended to maintain this distinction that we had for a long time about what can be dispensed out a drive-through window, or drive-through use, as we call them in Danbury. As you know, marijuana cultivation, sales, and use for purposes other than through the state's medical marijuana program is still illegal in Connecticut. And again, that distinction is important in terms of uses, licenses, and legalization. Which I'll discuss below. So again, a drive-through use or facility as defined in the zoning regulations is a use, either principal or accessory, that dispenses food, beverages, products, or services to patrons who remain in motor vehicles. And again, they are commonly identified by the drive-up window. In the CA80 zone, as you know, excluding the delivery of drugs by a licensed pharmacy, no use can be accessed by a drive-in or drive-through facility by which food, beverages, or similar products are dispensed to patrons waiting in motor vehicles. Again, it was specifically contained in the amendment proposed last year. As you know, the CA80 zone is only one zone in the city of Danbury. It's along Mill Plain Road, which is an arterial road, which has increasing traffic volumes and congestion. Drive-through uses are also prohibited for medical marijuana dispensaries. The way the existing regulations are written within portions of the CG20 zone along Main Street, and many of those properties are also along an arterial or collector roadways. And again, allowing those uses, which is the drive-through portion, could affect the character of the area and impact traffic volumes and affect traffic safety and congestion. The proposed amendment would allow these medical marijuana dispensaries to dispense medical marijuana to patients in or caregivers via the drive-through window. And again, as I indicated in my staff report, on its face, it would appear appropriate given the rising use of medical marijuana, the mobility issues associated with patients who qualify for the use of medical marijuana, and the increasing number of conditions for which medical marijuana is allowed. But we have to look at other issues, and the other issues are associated with pending legislation that could legalize adult use or adult cannabis use marijuana in if it were approved by the state. And that in the pending legislation, that would allow a dispensary after obtaining an additional license to dispense marijuana products other than medical marijuana purposes. And I think, again, maybe that's the reason why some of the language is kind of written the way it is. That legislation is called an Act Responsibly and Equitably Regulating Adult Use Cannabis. It's Bill 888. And it would legalize adult use cannabis in Connecticut. It's that legislation is 370 pages in length, and it would allow dispensaries to become kind of a hybrid retailer. So they would be allowed to dispense medical marijuana products as well as other marijuana products. What that does, if the proposed petition were to be approved, would result in the dispensing of products out of a drive-through window that aren't necessarily medical marijuana related. It would be other products. And what that does is it kind of sort of blurs the distinction of what we've been trying to do over the last few years. And that is keeping the distinction between pharmacies and drugs versus out a drive-through window versus other products such as food, hamburgers, drinks, donuts, things like that, out a drive-through window. And I think that, as I indicated in my staff report, kind of would blur the line. And we've long protected the CA80 zone from uses with drive-through windows for a number of reasons. We've also recently, and I guess not too recent, but in the last couple of years, prevailed in that case, EBC Realty LLC versus the City of Danbury, City of Danbury Zoning Commission and Planning Commission, relative to what that means in terms of a drive-through use in that zone. So the fact that there's this pending legislation and how that could really impact, should we open up the medical marijuana dispensaries to allow a drive-through, again, that may result in other products being dispensed through the window. Wanted to bring that to your attention. In terms of licenses, currently the pharmacies are licensed pursuant to Chapter 400J of the statutes, and the medical marijuana dispensaries are not considered pharmacies, and they're licensed pursuant to Chapter 420F of the statutes. As you know, marijuana is still considered a Schedule I controlled substance. You can't sell marijuana in a pharmacy. Again, as I noted, based on the above, the commissions could reasonably conclude that amending the regulations as proposed kind of opens the door for the delivery of cannabis products and other related products out a drive-through use or window. And that would undermine what we've been trying to protect, especially in the CA80 zone. And they could result in some traffic impacts on our arterial roads and congestion. And in addition, I think it's reasonable for the commissions to conclude that if that pending legislation were to be approved, this petitioner would again seek to amend the regulations to delete the prohibition which exists in the regulations right now regarding the sale of recreational marijuana in dispensaries. That's just a next logical step should the adult use bill pass. We did, as a result of this petition, call the Department of Consumer Protection, who does the licensing for the dispensaries, and ask them questions relative to not only the pending legislation, but whether or not there were existing dispensaries that had drive-through windows and how did that work. And their response was that they had gotten questions over the years since 2012 and the legislation had originally passed, but they weren't aware of any specific facility that had a drive-through window. And while the existing regulations wouldn't necessarily prohibit that, they would, if they were looking at a license for a dispensary under the existing regulations, look at additional security measures, lighting and things like that relative to the, to a facility having a drive-through window. We were informed by the state that while the delivery via a carrier of the products is contemplated in this new legislation, the existing statutes only allow deliveries to licensed Department of Public Health facilities, which are basically hospitals. What they did tell us, however, was that during this declared public health emergency, they were kind of relaxing some of the standards and saying you can provide curbside pickup for the medical marijuana dispensaries. So in other words, this is an alternative to a drive-through window. People could call up, schedule a time, order what they need to do, and kind of just like you would get, curbside pickup at a restaurant, the same thing would happen. So people would not have to exit their vehicle and to get their medical marijuana products. And they indicated to us that it was likely that that would be allowed to be continued. In terms of compliance with the plan of conservation and development, this is not a specific zone change, so a finding of consistency with the land development plan map is not required. And while the amendments may be considered, consistent with some aspects of the land development plan section about changing regulations regarding changing needs, it's also inconsistent with other portions of the plan, which talks about coordinating land use decisions with transportation and make transportation systems to ensure that the roads and the highways can accommodate changes. And I think that's an important consideration when you're talking about drive-through windows and what that does to the adjacent roadway system. We've all seen backups onto adjacent roadways from facilities with drive-through windows, specifically fast food restaurants. So again, to amend the regulations, the commissions have to find in the planning commission consistency with the plan of conservation and development, whether it meets the purpose and intent of the CA80 and CG20 zone, and will it negatively impact the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. And while again, I believe there are aspects of the provision of this product to people who need it, there's like broader implications of just kind of opening the door and what that could lead to. And we have concerns about that. And I just felt it was important to bring up those concerns to the commissions when you deliberate on this petition. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
Mr. Sylvain, was there a question or comment?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Please.
I definitely understand some of the reasons behind the staff's reluctance for this change and some of the concerns. a primary one being traffic. But I guess I kind of want to understand some of the concerns a little more. You know, as if this did happen, you know, what would be the issue with adding a drive-through aside from traffic? And related to the traffic, I'd be curious, how does it differ from the bank use that had the drive-through at that location? And you know, unlike a fast food restaurant, maybe more like the Shake Shack example where we were concerned about queuing, I would imagine that you would have to have an appointment to pull up to use this service, so there wouldn't be queuing or anything like that there. And with the concern over the eventuality of recreational, I guess I would wonder, you know, wouldn't they need to apply for a separate change to this regulation in order to permit that? Isn't this specific to the medical? And if so, I guess, wouldn't it be our job to make sure the appropriate restrictions were in place so that we didn't get something we didn't want or products that we didn't want being distributed via the drive-through? Those are kind of my questions.
Well, okay, I'll take this last question first. I guess, you know, so under the scenario that the pending legislation is approved, so now a dispensary can apply for a license to sell recreational marijuana products, some of which could be, again, it's a blurred distinction between a hamburger and a gummy cannabis product, something you eat, a brownie, something like they can make that you eat, that's recreational. So I could see somebody down the line saying, I put that in my mouth, I should be able to put this in my mouth. And so tell me what the distinction, why can't then I have a fast food restaurant along this arterial that we've long protected against that kind of use? So I'm just raising the concern that it just blurs the distinction of, you know, getting, you know, making a deposit at a bank is not a food product. And we made that distinction when we did the amendment last year or 2 years, a year and a half ago. And there were specific prohibitions against, number one, a drive-through, because we thought in our heads, like, that may be coming. Plus, you know, they couldn't sell recreational products. So, I mean, you could just see it's a natural progression. If the state says, okay, we've legalized it, they're going to come back. I mean, I don't see how you can't anticipate that they wouldn't come back. I mean, they're coming back for this, right? They've come, and right, you would consider it at the time, but it does blur, again, I'm using the same phrase, it blurs the distinction. We've said there's a distinction about, you know, getting a change for $100 bill and waiting online to get, you know, burgers and fries, and what that does to the traffic. There's a different traffic pattern, you know, albeit COVID aside, when, you know, the banks are busy, but, you know, getting fast food and fast food related products and food was different than getting your shirts at a cleaners through a drive-through, because there was a cleaners on Mill Plain Road at one time, and the banks. So I'm just raising the concern that it opens the door a little bit, and a little bit leads to a bigger open door. And is there an alternative? And not, again, that we're not compassionate about people who have compromised mobility. Totally am. I get that. I'm just concerned about what could possibly happen. And this is like, they're in consideration of this 370 page bill, like, as we speak. Is it going to happen? I don't know. You read what I read. I'm just saying it's logical for us to presume that if it were to get approved, they would, and now you have a drive-through, they're going to go back and get a license, and they're going to say, I'd like to sell recreational marijuana. So now I'm going to come back to you and amend that regulation, which has a prohibition. Our existing regulations have a prohibition about that, to say it's legal now in the state. So why are you making this illegal? why are you prohibiting me from doing that in Danbury? It's just, and then that further blurs the line between like kind of the fast food restaurants. I mean, and we put up, you know, we had a big lawsuit against just kind of this, what you are and what the use is, you know, 2 years ago that we won, just on this, basically on this, on the drive-through use. So
Thank
did
you.
I answer your
And-
first question? I'm sorry.
Yes, and thank you. And I forgot to say, you know, I'm not saying that alternative plan isn't a good idea either. But I guess I'm just trying to understand what the concerns are of having the drive-through. And you know, commenting on one of your comments, I would certainly think that these transactions are much more like a bank than a fast food restaurant. You know, they check your ID, you go up to the counter. You know, it's not a wheel and deal type thing. I mean, they certainly they certainly turn over if you read the statistics, but I would almost be more concerned about queuing of people trying to find parking spots and getting into line more than, you know, setting an appointment and quickly getting their medical marijuana and being able to move on quickly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that that pending legislation allows a dispensary to become kind of this hybrid retailer. They're a dispensary and they're like a retail shop. Right? So you could go and you can say, I'm, you know, Sharon Calitro, and I have a card and I need my medical marijuana, but I also want something else that you're selling. So now it's another product, and the product is more similar to something you eat and, you know, and not medically necessitated. And so how do you then make that distinction that, you know, I'm a hamburger guy and I, you know, or I'm a donut and coffee guy, and you tell me what the difference is. And so I'm just saying, if you want to do it, just do it eyes wide open, that this might occur. Again, from a dispensary related issue, which this involves, we're only allowed 2 in Danbury in the CG20 and CA80. So, and we have 1 approved. So we know it's going there. It's been approved for it. So, you know, there would only be one other one. It's just, I could kind of see kind of the chain reaction to it. That's all. And it's my responsibility to raise the issues to you of the potential.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Oh, Joe's muted.
Joel's muted. I see his lips moving.
There you go. There you go. Yes, I would like to comment. First of all, I appreciate that staff recognizes that marijuana is still a Schedule I drug and illegal in the United States, even though many states have thumbed their nose at federal laws on this item. Now to more practical issues here. I hear the argument, oh, what if they just can't get inside? Well, that argument can be held for a hamburger too. So there's nothing unique about accessing, and in this definitely comes on products, other products. In-house curb service or walking in the door or wheeling in the door like I would have to do. It's another product. You have to do the same thing in this zone if you want French fries. You cannot do a drive-through. I don't think arguing about the prospective legislation, I mean, it certainly in the back of your mind, but it can't be a consideration, I don't think, on the decision of yes or no. I think this application has to pass or fail on its own intent. And from my perspective, other products, as the current regulations reads, this falls in other products. Like I said, just like a hamburger does, to use Sharon's example. So this this deserves no more consideration for a drive-through than a McDonald's or Starbucks. I mean, it's another product, and we prohibit it in this area for a very specific reason. We have fought against this right along to control the kind of traffic and such on this in this area. So it doesn't make a difference. It's medical marijuana. It could be anything that's other. And I don't see there's any reason that we should give this special consideration, like I say, versus McDonald's or a Starbucks. I know you will have the argument, it hasn't come up, that the number of dispensaries in the state are controlled by the state. There's only one in this area because there's only a certain number in the whole state. It's not that we restrict it to two. The state is making those allocations. That could change tomorrow. But again, prospective, I don't think should play into this decision. It's, does this request for this change in the zoning regulations differ from any other product? And other than it be federally illegal, I don't see any difference. And I don't see how we could possibly, in good conscience, say, we give this a positive recommendation versus anybody else that would come in the door and say, I want to sell my other product through the window. It's no different. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Joel. At this time, anyone else want to weigh in or not necessary? Go ahead, Helen.
Okay, well, Joel made some very good points there. And I do agree with Sharon that once, we kind of open the door and then we have, recreational use, it does become like any other product. So at some point we'll be cascading into, sort of the fast food traffic clone, which is a big factor on Mill Plain there of not having it. We have turned down referrals and also a recent, I guess it was a 7-Eleven that's pretty much was across the street from the site we're talking about, where we turned down, I think the whole thing went down, but a large part of it was because of the drive-through window and the fact that we just did not want that. There's and that's consistent throughout that whole zone. So we either say let's stop, let's not approve this right now. Maybe we wait until we see, if as the state develops their legislation or whatever, where it goes. Maybe it's a little too early, but if we do want approval, then the next step is when it gets when they come back and say, well, we want to use a window for recreational use, then we're going to have to decide if we don't want that, how good is the argument for that at this point. So I think I'm more on let's not approve it right now, kind of, take a wait and see on this. And maybe, and I think it's a better place to stop it than the next step. And if we don't stop at the next step, then we're going to have, a lot of issues that we've been trying to avoid all these years. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Helen. Mr. Kiokio.
I agree wholeheartedly with all of Joel's comments, and I don't really have much more to add than what Joel said. I think he made some very good points.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just have a question for Joel on how does it not differ from other products? I mean, the one reason that I've heard that it's not allowed in the pharmacies is because it's still Schedule 1, but is it not serving a medical need, much like a pharmacy would? I would think that would be a major distinction. And my other comment would be, in terms of being worried about a distinction from fast food or from other products, I mean, these products have marijuana in them. Is that not a distinction we could set in our language when we write these regulations?
Are you asking me that question?
No, that was not for you. Sorry, Joe.
Okay.
And lastly, I guess, again, I'm not saying that there isn't concern about opening us up to future dangers, but I'm failing to understand what those dangers are given our ability to control them. That's my final comment.
Thank you, Perry.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Sharon. Do we allow, because I haven't seen this anywhere, do we allow drive-through windows for liquor stores?
No.
No.
And why would that be? Because we have it for hamburgers and we have it for coffee. So what's behind not having that for liquor? Because I guess you could make a parallel between, marijuana and use and liquor use.
Well, I don't know the liquor laws off the back of my hands, but I don't think you're allowed to buy liquor out of window under the liquor control laws.
I see. So that's statewide.
Yeah, Joanne might know better than me, actually.
We did have it approved at one time for the Dairy Town on Page
Yeah, the
Arrow
Dairy
Road,
Town, right.
but it was with a lot of stipulations, closed circuit TV and, verification of ID. They were supposed to photograph the ID. It never came to fruition, but they did go through it, and the state was not really in favor of it. The state doesn't want it. They don't want drive-through liquor, even though like places like Florida have it. Connecticut doesn't want it.
So if I may, that might make another argument, because we wouldn't maybe be controlling whether or not we're allowed to have a drive-up window or not. It might be the state's marijuana,
Order pizza.
Excuse me. So I mean, would state agencies kind of parallel the two, the liquor stores with the, and we don't know because it hasn't been, I don't know if it's in the bill, and it's early yet. It's too early.
Yeah, I mean,
We might have to do it and then undo it. I mean, I don't know.
Well, our discussions with the Corporation Council, myself, discussions with the state CDP Consumer Protection staff for the adult marijuana program. They're aware of the pending legislation, and they would just have to, it's not really very specific to it, but he indicated to us that there would be all these other controls that would then have to be in place to ensure that you were actually getting, security and, this proper ID and everything like that associated with it. So kind of they were in the same position, staff, in terms of, pending legislation that we were. We're just reading what is out there.
So can we say our decision here, it might be preconditioned by what comes out from the state level? No?
No,
we
you
should
see-
take
Well,
our
if
guide-
you're asking me, I would just say,
No?
you're rather than relying on something maybe of the state, that, as Joel had indicated, and we all know, we have spent years protecting that specific zone and other areas, but that specific zone from an intrusion and what kind of the fast food and what that brings to the traffic network in terms of traffic congestion and safety, and associated with those uses to that corridor and what that actually could mean. So we made the distinction when we allowed remember when the medical marijuana program first came up, we said no dispensaries, no production facilities in Danbury from 2012. First, we had a moratorium. We figured, Dennis worked it out, figured it out. We came to you, we said, okay. Then we defined the use. Then they came back, this petitioner in 2012 and said, okay, now, we've been here around for 7 years. There's a bunch of dispensaries. You all see how it's working. And we said, okay, under certain conditions, right? So CA80, CG20, only 2 in the Danbury. You can't sell recreational and you can't have a drive-through. Why? We were protecting the drive-through so you wouldn't worry about that distinction, because somebody in the future is going to say to you, you tell me what the difference is forget the medical marijuana for sake of this discussion, right? Because now you're a hybrid retailer. You could sell your medical marijuana to you or me who have a card, but I could drive up and say, I want some gummies. I want some brownies. I want whatever else is going to be legal. I don't know what it is. I'm aging myself. I'm just saying to you, you tell me how some crafty attorney is going to say, tell me what the difference is between that and a donut. And now what the city has long protected against in that zone, and that's the distinction, Perry. And I get it, it's a what if, but you open that little door a little bit and it's going to be easier for somebody to make the argument that you can't distinguish really between the two. So that's all I'm bringing up to you, is that it may make it harder in the future if you decide to do this. And if you want to do it, let's do it with our eyes wide open that may occur. I get it. They'll have to come back to you and all of that, but they're going to make the argument there's really no difference. Tell me what the difference is.
One final point of clarification for you, Sharon. Would we not have the ability to restrict it just to medical use? Because I think it depends on the state, but a lot of these places have separate parking areas for the medical patients, separate lines. I mean, what is to stop us? You're worried about this once it's hybrid retail, our ability to stop future applicants from stretching that. But why can't we stop it before that with the medical only?
I mean, the easy answer to that, Perry, is, and I'll let Joanne, she's raising her hand, but let me just answer. The easy answer to that is we're going to have to send a zoning officer out there and decide who in the window is getting medical marijuana with a card and who's buying gummies.
Right.
Like that's a
enforcement,
pure enforcement issue. And we have a zoning enforcement officer and a half, basically. So in the city of this size. So that's like no different than any other. This is an enforcement issue. And how do we, we don't have the ability to do that. And so they could be doing it all the time and maybe not the day we go there.
and it's just not good policy to enact regulations that require those kind of enforcement, because we just don't have the staff. And how do you enforce it? I mean, it's a tough one.
I do understand that. Thank you. But it's a highly regulated industry, so I would think they're.
But I'm just saying, Perry, when they get a license to be a hybrid retailer, you drive up and, unless somebody's there asking them, are you getting medical marijuana? Are you getting, it doesn't matter. You drive it to the window, you say, can I get some gummy? I'm being flip about it, but because all I know is about gummies. But
well, the carryout service has worked good. I've been there. I've been there as a caregiver, and the carryout service works very well. I've seen them do it. So, I mean, people order ahead, and when they get there, they call and they say, I'm here, and somebody brings out to them what, their stuff, and they stay in their car. So at this point, until everything is resolved with the other stuff, it's something we need to consider.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Of course, Joel.
Just a quickie. People seem to be focused on this prospective, what if we get recreational marijuana. If you want to focus on that, think about this. If we say yes to drive-through medical marijuana, and we say this is something different than everything else we're prohibiting, and then they came in with the recreational marijuana, it doesn't matter. If they're going to come in and said, okay, now we want to sell recreational. The state's going to let us. We'll probably have to do that just from the pressure standpoint. But who cares if it's medical or not at that point? They're going to drive through and say, hey, I want a half an ounce of Acapulco Gold. It doesn't matter whether they've got a card or not.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a good point, Joel. That's a good point.
That I guess that's my point about, like, it blurs the distinction about what this really is. But I want to be really clear. I totally get it. And Joanne could speak as a caregiver. the compromised mobility is a factor at the dispensaries. But there's they have an alternative. They could assign some spaces. They could do curbside. They've allowed that, and they're telling us they're going to continue to allow that. So at this point, there is kind of a feasible alternative if you thought that you wanted to wait a little bit. That's all. It's not like there's no alternative. It's this or that. There is an alternative. People don't keep their cars.
Well, here's how I see the world. First of all, here we are with another pesky referral. And these referrals are beginning to drive me a little crazy. I mean, first of all, as evidenced by this discussion, it's an enormously complicated issue with many different factors to consider. We have no public hearing. We have no expert testimony. We have no experts on marijuana, no traffic people, nothing. We do the best we can. Staff writes a great report and we talk. And, it's a big decision with limited information, and that's just the way it goes with referrals. And it seems like lately we're spending more time talking about referrals than special exceptions with public hearings. I mean, those are the easy ones. So that's beginning to bother me a little bit. In this particular case, as was said, this application, or this referral rather, has a serious timing issue. This thing shows up on our agenda on June 2nd. As far as I know, and I could be wrong, the legislative session in Connecticut ends next Wednesday, and the zoning commission meeting is next Tuesday. It's a 300-page bill, 300 whatever, and it's got to be reconciled and resolved and voted on by next Wednesday. And the night before, zoning is going to open their public hearing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to get passed or not. I will say this: if there was no possibility of recreational marijuana, none, and it was a medical situation only, and they wanted a drive-through, I probably wouldn't have any more objection to that than I do the drive-through the CVS down the hill from where I live. It's a pharmacy. There are legitimate medical uses for marijuana. I mean, no doctor ever prescribed a bottle of Jack Daniels, but they have prescribed marijuana for various things. So I have no objection to that. I do, however, see where this sort of hybrid situation could create a problem. And I won't repeat everything that was said, but I can foresee that. It's going to open a door that we may have never intended to be opened. Drive-throughs are tricky. So, I mean, I can't, even though I would hate to have a negative referral based on legislation that hasn't passed yet, I'm not comfortable with that. I still think there's a significant timing issue here. We live in this country where it's illegal. Marijuana is illegal at the federal level, but in some states it's legal for recreational and medical, some just medical. It's a mess. It's the marijuana issue in this country is a mess. And, I think you have to proceed with a great deal of caution. So, I mean, my inclination is to have a negative referral based on just way too many variables, way too many open items, way too many timing issues. We'll know in a week whether the state of Connecticut is going to move forward with recreational or not. So if we could just kind of move this thing forward and hope for better clarity in the future, that's where I stand. That's how I see it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have 2 words about the future of possible recreational marijuana. It doesn't matter. The issue is protecting this zone from drive-throughs as we've been doing. So as such, I'm going to make a motion to issue a negative referral based on one, it's definitely in violation of the plan of conservation and development. And we want to continue to protect those zones from excessive traffic and issues associated with it and anything else anybody can think of.
Joel, do you want to throw in it has the potential to negatively impact the health, safety, and welfare of the general public?
Didn't I say that? What he said.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion on the table for a negative referral. I'd like to get a second for that motion if I could.
I'll do that. I'll second as Bob.
Bobby Kiokio, second. Okay. Other than things we've said already, is there any additional comments or discussion on this matter?
Yeah, who says there's no experts in the room?
Well, I noticed you did identify marijuana by a particular city in Mexico, but we won't talk about that.
I interviewed the Commissioner of Public Protection when this bill was approved.
Joe, you don't have to tell us. You don't have to. You're not on trial.
Okay.
All right. All right. Listen, here's how this is going to break down. I'm going to take a roll call vote. A yes is in favor of a negative referral. A no is not in favor of a negative referral. These things get very dicey, and Joanne and Jennifer and Sharon will tell you all about them. You got to be careful with these referrals. So again, a yes is in favor of a negative referral. A no is not in favor of a negative referral. So with that said, I will take a roll call vote. Mr. Urice.
Yes.
Ms. Hostetter.
Yes.
Mr. Kiokio.
Yes.
Mr. Sylvain.
No.
And Chairman Finaldi will vote yes. So it is the roll call vote is a 4-1 for a negative referral. Again, I caution everyone, this is a referral. The City of Danbury Zoning Commission will have a full-blown public hearing with lots more information than we have. And we can only hope and pray that they have enough information to do their job. So that is that. Wow. Okay. I think there's nothing under new business correspondence. The one thing under other matters, you'll see request for lot consolidation, lot line revision for Peterson's Farm, 11-13 Peterson's Lane. We're not going to speak to that tonight. Jennifer
That's
has
correct.
asked me to push that to the
If you can
meeting, right?
table it, and we'll address it at the next meeting.
I don't think we do.
Motion to table.
Oh, do we need a motion to table?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Okay, Joel made the motion. Helen seconded it to table this matter. Is there any discussion? All in favor of tabling, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
And I think that is it for this evening. So unless there's anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Ellen.
Second.
A motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for a very lively discussion. Have a good evening.
Two.
Thank you.